How do you reflect now on the events of the last 12 months, and particularly the way that the United States has responded to the events around the death of George Floyd?
Well, Kieran, I take a slightly dissident view of this matter. The murder of George Floyd was a terrible, shocking, grotesque event which appalled every human being on the planet who saw it. And the criminal who did it has rightly been convicted of murder and sentenced to a very lengthy prison term. But I think America is going down the wrong road on race. It's making race and identity the centre of everything. And this critical race theory, I think, is madness. The facts are getting lost. You know, America is a gun-soaked country. White people per encounter with police are more likely to get killed than black people, but black people have many more encounters with police, of course. I think the calming event has been the election of Joe Biden, so everybody's calmed down a bit. That's good. But I think the whole Black Lives Matter movement has been of very dubious benefit, and I don't think it leads to any long-term solution. It just leads to an endless infusion of greater resentment and identity angst. And the lesson of black identity politics is that it ultimately provokes white identity politics, which becomes very, very destructive.
The embassy in Afghanistan is closing to mark the fact that our troops are leaving too. Obviously, it's a security concern to have diplomats there. And as one analyst put it to me yesterday, Greg, it's at a time when the Taliban will increasingly assert itself in Kabul.
Yeah, Kieran, I think this is a pathetic decision by the Australian government, absolutely pathetic. I support the withdrawal of our troops. First of all, it shows that everything we've done for the last 20 years has been a complete, monumental, absolute 100% failure in Afghanistan. Why did we sacrifice 40 Australian dead servicemen if at the end of all that we can't even shelter an Australian diplomat inside an American compound? And secondly, the idea that you are not even safe, a resident Australian diplomat is not even safe inside an American compound where we could have sheltered our embassy, is utterly ridiculous. It just shows how frivolous and foolish and dishonest our whole Afghanistan participation was from start to finish. We went there for one reason, to please the Americans. We were never serious about having any strategic effect there. We never developed a meaningful relationship with the Afghan people. And now, you know, we're running away as quick as we can. We'll cut the aid budget. And, you know, this is the failure of Western policy. It's either got to be all or nothing. You're either in there fighting the war that should be fought by Afghans, or you don't do anything and you run away. I just think this is a dismal signpost in Western policy generally and Australian policy in particular.
On the broader US alliance, one of the key things that Australia offers, of course, one of the facilities that is of greatest importance within the alliance is the Pine Gap and intelligence sharing facilities. That's massive importance. But you write in the Australian today as well, increasingly it's about location, location, location as to why our presence and alliance with the United States is of great import to their strategic and defence thinkers.
Yes, the acting US ambassador in an interview with the Australian today said the US wanted to station more munitions in Northern Australia. Northern Australia is close to one of the potential hot points of conflict, the South China Sea, and not too distant from the other great hotspot of potential conflict, which is Taiwan. But it is beyond the immediate range of most Chinese missiles. It makes enormous sense for the US to have a lot of missiles, potentially a lot of troops, a lot of aircraft and a lot of ships in and around Northern Australia. If conflict kicks off over Taiwan, which we certainly hope it doesn't, every civilised human being on the planet will work as hard as they can to prevent conflict between China and America. And one way of preventing it is by showing credible deterrence to the Chinese. But if a conflict does kick off, the American forces in Guam and Okinawa are extremely vulnerable to Chinese missile attack. So the Americans want to have a lot of pre-positioned forces, munitions, missiles, all the rest of it, a bit beyond that immediate missile range, but nonetheless close to the theatre. And certainly Northern Australia is a critical point for this. We want the Americans to be in the region. We want them to make a security, balanced role and to be sort of the provider of security of last resort. They're certainly our provider of security of last resort, given how incoherent our defence policies are. We waste billions of dollars on ridiculous capabilities like tanks. We can't look after ourselves. We need the Americans. So the biggest American presence possible in Northern Australia is good for us, and I think our government should be facilitating this American desire. Peter Jennings revealed last week that the Americans initially offered 5,000 rather than 2,000 Marines in Northern Australia. I think it was very foolish of the Australian government to resist that at the time. The bigger the American presence in Northern Australia, the better it is for us, the better it is for the region.